welcome to the Equestrian Queensland Fundamental Series. I'm Tani McCormack, Senior Sport Development Officer at Equestrian Queensland and Director of the series. First of all, congratulations on beginning your journey with your new off-the-track horse. This series has been designed to support you in successfully transitioning your horse from the racing industry, promoting high-quality healthcare and retraining foundations.
We thank QRIC, the Queensland Racing Integrity Commission, for funding this project through their Racing Animal Welfare Grants program. We are proud to support the promotion of life after racing. To follow the full series and for more resources, go to the Equestrian Queensland website and click on EQ Fundamental Series under the Education tab or follow the link below.
Hello, my name's Shane Gillard and I'm Queensland's Racing Integrity Commissioner. I'm pleased to introduce this Equestrian Queensland video series, which has been funded through the QRIC Equine Welfare Racing Animal Welfare Grants Program. Established in 2016, the Queensland Racing Integrity Commission is an independent statutory body which oversees the integrity and welfare standards of racing animals and participants in Queensland. Partnerships are critical to how we work at the Commission, specifically to ensure that the rules of racing are upheld and to safeguard the welfare of racing animals to ensure that everyone can compete on an even playing field. This successful QRIC Raw Grant program has assisted Equestrian Queensland to develop these educational training videos that demonstrate important aspects of acquiring, assessing and re-educating retired racehorses to prepare them for their first equestrian sport competition. These videos raise the profile of alternative career opportunities for retired thoroughbred and standard bred horses and educate those in the market to purchase a retired racehorse in Queensland.
Hello and welcome to the EQ Fundamental Series supported by QRIC. My name's Dr. Kate Fenner and I'm here to talk to you today about horse behaviour and in particular off-the-track horse behaviour. So my background is I'm a horse trainer by trade and I spent a lot of time with off-the-track horses. As you can see, I'm quite old now, but I've had off-the-track horses since I was 10. My father had a lot of failed racehorses and they always came to me straight after that. So that was a lot of fun, but I learned a lot the hard way along the way. So in recent years, or not that recent, I started studying a lot about horse behaviour and how we can really optimise training for different types of horses and different types of situations. The off-the-track horses are a real favourite of mine, and particularly the thoroughbreds, I have to say. I have a real soft spot for them because I think they're so versatile and they're so much fun. But I do think that they have a few special requirements that, as a new off-the-track owner, if you are, you need to really take those into consideration. And so at Can Do Equine, I've developed some training methods that really apply particularly to off-the-track horses. And today I want to discuss a few of those things with you that will help you on your journey, and especially right at the start when the horses are fresh from the track and you're going to have some behaviours that perhaps you haven't seen before, even if you're quite experienced with horses, and things that will really help you settle into your off-the-track journey with your horse. So this off-the-track gelding, he's only been off the track for a couple of months and he's showing some really typical signs and things you're going to see, the types of behaviours you'll see with your horse. You know, you'll notice he's been chewing on the lead rope a little bit and he's a bit fidgety, his attention's not very good, he's finding it a little hard to focus. It's a bit boring standing here while I'm talking. And so what I don't want to do is I don't want to punish him for anything he's doing. What I want to try and do is give him something else to think about. So what I want to do is really use what we call combined reinforcement, all right? What that means is using both positive and negative reinforcement together. We often think that we only use positive reinforcement, but it's actually really hard to just use positive reinforcement. So we're going to use a combination of the two things, but what I want to do first of all is to make it really clear to the horse what I want him to do. Okay, so every time he moves his head over here, I'm going to ask him to move it over there. So I've got a spot on the horse I want to move. That's his nose. I've got a direction. I want it to go to the right, okay? And I'm going to put my hand on his nose, that's my motivator, and ask his face to go to the right, right there. As soon as it moves right, I'm going to remove my hand. So that removing the hand is the negative reinforcement. And for doing that, I'm going to give him a rub, and that's the positive reinforcement. So right here, I'm just ask him gently to move. He moved. I'm going to give him a rub for doing that. I'm going to do the same thing, ask him to back up. I'm going to place my hand here, put some gentle pressure. As soon as he takes, I release it. I tell him he's great for doing that. I'm going to do it again, just gentle pressure. And I've got some pressure here. Those are my two forms of negative reinforcement. And now I'm stroking him for positive reinforcement. And that makes my combined reinforcement using the two things together. So I'll ask him to take another step back. Gentle pressure on his chest right there. He took the step, and I'm going to reward him for doing that. And you can see now that I'm starting to ask him to do things. He's a little less distracted. He's not trying to turn right anymore. He's still chewing on the lead rope, but that's not the end of the world. I'm not too fussed about that. I want him to come over here. I'm going to put pressure on the lead rope, hold it till he moves his head to the left. He did that. I release the pressure, and I give him a scratch for that. Moving his head back again here, and give him a scratch for that. One of the things I think is really important to remember with off-the-track horses is what we want to do is we want to make their lives really predictable. Because quite often when you've got a lot of different riders, they've got different jockeys, they've got different stable hands, they've got track work riders, they've got trainers, all sorts of different people handling them. They're all going to handle them slightly differently. So one thing you can do for your horse when you get the horse off a track is you can be really consistent with your training. And I think that really helps develop those behaviours that you want to focus on and that you want to promote. About spot, direction, motivator and reward. So we'll go through that. The spot on the horse you want to move, the direction you want it to go, what you're going to use to motivate the horse, and the reward for doing that. If you think about all those four things with everything you ask your horse to do, his world becomes really predictable. And the horse starts to give you those behaviours you've been reinforcing using that combined reinforcement. So we'll go back to the asking him to back up. My spot on the horse is going to be his left front leg. That's what I want to move. The direction I want it to go is backwards. The motivator, I'm going to use my hand on his chest. And the reward is going to be to give him a scratch. So here we go. And that left front and back, and say, good boy, well done, good boy. Okay. And so that's going to really help me make his life predictable. And now you can do anything once you have those four basic principles. So the spot on the horse you want to move, let's say I want to walk him forward and I'm going to tie him up over here. The spot might be the left front again. This time the direction is going to be forward. This time I might use some pressure on the lead rope and just ask him forward with the lead rope. And the reward again, first I release the pressure, but the reward I have to add something for the positive reinforcement. It means adding something. So I'm going to add a scratch for him doing it right. So one of the things you'll notice when I'm standing here with this horse and chatting to you is that I'm not correcting him for chewing on the lead rope. And I think with these horses, we really need to sort of pick our battles, so to speak. And I really want to stay proactive with him. So by that, I mean, I want to stay using combined reinforcement. I want to stay using reinforcement. And you'll know you're using reinforcement if you do something to encourage a behavior in the future. So I'm not going to address his chewing on the lead rope because it's not something I want to encourage in the future. But if I correct that behavior, I'm using punishment. So punishment you use, whatever I do with him, I'm using punishment if I'm trying to prevent a behavior from stopping in the future. You know, I want less of that behavior, which I do, but I'm not going to punish him for doing it because I don't want to go down that punishment road because it's really reactive. So I want to stay really proactive. I want to do things. So what can I do instead? Instead of punishing him for doing that, I could get him to do something else. So I'm going to get him to just step back and step forward. Okay, so we looked at step back. I put my, and he's getting really good at that. Oh, I know it. Step forward. Good boy. Look at you doing that. I'm going to ask him to step forward. Good boy. And hold. Good boy. And step back. Good boy. And step forward. And hold. Good boy. And step back. And step back. Good. So I'm using 3 forms of pressure there. I used my voice. I clucked at him. I used some pressure on the lead rope. I'm going to bring him over here. Good boy. And I also touched his shoulder, touched his chest. So 3 forms of pressure. And I release all of them as soon as I get the movement I want, and then I add the positive reinforcement. But I've stayed really proactive. He's getting his bottom bit. All right. So again, I can come over this side of him. If I want him to move his hindquarter across, I'm going to put my hand on him and just ask him to move across right there, which he did really nicely. And then I'm going to do the same thing, move his shoulder across, so ask him to come with me. Good boy. Oh, good boy. Good boy. And take a step back to be a little bit out of my space. Good boy. Well done. So I managed to stay really proactive all the time. I didn't correct him. And I'm only teaching him behaviors that I want to see in the future. So what I want him to do is to learn that when I walk forward, that he comes with me. So if I take a step first, I bring his attention. Good boy. Good boy. He's soon going to learn what's coming is the pressure on the lead rope. He doesn't really want the pressure on the lead rope. So he's going to start responding when he hears me cluck. Then he's going to start responding when he sees my foot going forward. The same with the backwards. Back. Good boy. He doesn't really want the pressure, so we use that last. So it's always a good idea to use your voice first, because your voice is pressure, which means you need to stop using your voice when you get what you want. And this scratching him and rubbing him, this is the positive reinforcement. We often think about positive reinforcement and we make an assumption that it means food. And I don't use a lot of food treats because I don't really want him, looking or searching for food treats. So I think it's anything the horse wants. So he might want a kind word, he might want a pat, he might want a stroke. All of these things are positive reinforcement. And so this horse is he's nice and calm. Now, not all off-the-track horses are nice and calm. And one of the things that we need to understand about the horse is its emotional level. And every horse's emotional level is slightly different. And your horse will have a different normal or natural emotional level to this horse. So the first thing to do really is to make an assessment of your horse's emotional level. And thank you so much for doing that, because what he just did was he just increased his emotional level just a little bit. Did you see he raised his head? Now, when I'm thinking about a horse's emotional level, I like to judge it out of 100. Just before, when he was nibbling on the lead rope and carrying on, he was a 50 out of 100. He wasn't focused. He was just, looking around, being a bit vague. And suddenly, he saw the horses out on the racetrack and he went to a 75. Yeah, and I could tell that 2 things. He pricked his ears and he raised his head. And those were the 2 things that, his emotional level's gone up. So if you've ever seen a horse being led that's going around like a kite, everything is high. So the higher things go, the more emotional your horse is. The first thing is always the head elevation. So look at the tip of the ear. As it go up, your emotional level's just gone up. Good. So on the emotional level front, so his head went up. That tells us that his emotional level's gone up. But usually everything will go up. So watch for signs. Head elevation is the first one. Tail elevation is another one. If you've seen a horse sort of running around with its tail in the air, its head's usually in the air as well, and it's quite often being quite vocal as well. So that's another sign. So tail, everything goes higher though. So its legs will go higher. If it's walking, if it's trotting, its legs are going to raise up higher. So everything will be higher when its emotional level goes up. So the first step is to assess it. So once we know where our horse is naturally, this horse is just he's a pretty standard horse. He's a 50, he's back to a 50 now. Maybe he goes to a 55 when he talks to his friend over there, but not much. But he went up quite quickly to a 75 there. And it's really tempting for us to think, oh, well, we'll just lower it. We'll just get him to calm down. We'll pat him, we'll be really nice to him, and we'll get him to relax. But we know, don't we, that we can't force a horse to relax. I can teach him to put his head down, perhaps, but it doesn't actually make him relax. He will put his head down when he's relaxed, but it doesn't work the other way. I can't force him to relax any more than I can force you to relax. So if I can't force him to relax, what can I do? Well, what I can do is I can increase his emotional level just a little bit. Okay, now I don't want to make him go from a 50 to an 80, and I could do that by driving a tractor past. I'd rather push him up to a 52, maybe a 53. Right? So I can do that really easily by asking him to do something. And we've already taught him to take a step or two forward and a step or two back. So we'll do that. Good. And over. Good boy. And back. And back. And back. Good boy. Good boy. And back. Good boy. Now you're going to get your bottom bitten again. Come over here. Wow. Good. And we're going to ask him to move his hindquarter. Good boy. Well done. Good boy. Beautiful. So now what we're starting to do is we're starting to have a conversation with him. So rather than just stand here ignoring him, hoping he'll just stand there and behave himself, I'm actually having a conversation with him. I'm asking him to do things, and I'm releasing pressure, and I'm rewarding him for doing that. So I'm using the combined reinforcement that we talked about, and I'm having this conversation. And what that does is it creates what I call a bubble around the horse. And I want to develop that bubble. And it's my bubble of communication. And it hasn't really got anything to do with the space or anything else. It's about communication. It's about me and him being on the same page, okay? And I can't expect to be on the same page with him if I'm not having a conversation with him. So the more I sit and talk to you, the more difficult it gets for me to keep him engaged. So what I'm going to do is keep asking him to do just little things. Move your head over there. Yeah? I'll reward him for doing that. I'll get him to take another step back. And take a step back. Good boy. And I'll reward him for that. So we keep the conversation going, and I keep my bubble. So then what happens is we strengthen that bubble all the time. And so we can begin to take that bubble other places. And every time I lose his attention, every time his head goes up, what's the first thing that happens when he pricks his ears and his head goes up? He bursts my bubble, doesn't he? He bursts my bubble. And so I have to think, oh, I better get that bubble back. And so I know he's burst it. And I need to think, okay, let me ask him to do something. I've got to raise his emotional level. There might have been a tractor went past and he went from a 50 suddenly to a 75. I'm going to think, oh my goodness, now I can't force him to relax. So I'm going to have to say, okay, I'm going to ask you to do something. You're a 75. I'm going to move you up to a 76 and get you to step this way. And he's going to come with me. And I'm going to tell him, that's great. That's great. Now I'm going to get you to move your hindquarters to the right, to the left. Now move your hindquarter, good boy, boy. Now I'm going to get you to back up. Good boy. Now he's done all those things, I'm going to offer him an opportunity just to relax. So I can't force him to relax, but I can increase his emotional level just a fraction, and then ask him, now, would you like to relax? So that's the way I do it. I think about that bubble all the time, from the very first time I touched the horse. And with this horse, the very first time I took hold of the lead rope, he just chewed on it and I was ignoring him really. We hadn't started a conversation. Now we've started a conversation. I'm going to walk him away and back to me, good boy, and turn him around. Good boy. And I release the pressure every time I pick up pressure. I want to know what it is I want to change with the horse. Do you know these horses have been very desensitized to pressure, and it's one of the things you're going to find with your off-the-track horse, because if you've ever seen them being led around the saddling paddocks and stuff, quite often they're yanked at, and that's pressure release, pressure release, pressure release, and it really means nothing. When they're being ridden, quite often they have a lot of pressure on their hands as well, and it means go faster, and it means stop, and it means everything, and it means nothing. And so your job really, now just turn him around again, keep him in my bubble, keep him doing something. Good boy, good. Your job is to resensitize him to pressure and to make pressure mean something. So that's why you don't see me hanging on to him here, talking to you like this. I'd rather he make the mistake and I can say, oh, okay, well, I didn't actually want you to walk forward. Let's walk backwards, and I'll pick it up and I'll ask him to do something else. And back up, and I'm going to keep asking till I get it. Keep asking. Good boy. Okay, so we've talked a bit about emotional level, and I have suggested that you need to increase it just a tiny bit to engage your horse with learning, or to actually get his attention back. So that's all very well when the horse is standing next to me, and to increase it, I just need to ask him to do something like walk forward or something. But if you're out with your horse and a tractor goes past and the horse really increases his emotional level, let's say up to a 70 or something, the last thing you want to do, or really is, if you think about it, is increase it even further. And I'm not asking you to push it up more. I'm asking you to engage the horse. By engaging the horse, it will increase its emotional level, maybe 1%. So you have to ask the horse to do something. So let's take the example, you're out riding the horse and suddenly a kangaroo bounces past and the horse goes from a 60 emotional level to an 85 really quickly. What I'm going to do in that situation, I know my bubbles burst, right? The kangaroos come down, the horse has pricked its ears, put its head up, and probably spun around. So what I need to do really quickly is build that bubble back. So I need to ask the horse to do something. So the horse has chosen 85 as the emotional level. I'm going to say, right, I'm going to ask you to do something. Maybe I'm going to ask you to turn left, so I'll pick up some pressure on the left rein. That's going to push that emotional level up to maybe 86. But once the horse says, oh, Kate's there, she's asked me to turn left, I'm going to do that. I release the pressure and I reward the horse, then I've started to build my bubble back. We talked earlier about the one thing you can't do is you can't force the horse to relax. So the only way you can get control of the horse's emotional level is actually to push it up a little bit, tiny bit, 1%, 2%, by asking it to do something and then offering it an opportunity to relax. That's what we call engaging the horse with learning, and it's building that bubble for you, and that's what keeps you safe. I find the thing that goes wrong mostly with training is people misjudge the emotional level, or they get it wrong, or they just don't address it. So the horse is either way too emotional and it's not learning, or it's not emotional enough, it's not engaged with you, and it's not learning. So it's a bit like, think back to when you're at school. You had different types of teachers. So you had those really boring teachers that spoke in monotone, and your engagement level was 0. Your emotional level was probably about a 30 out of 100, and you weren't learning. Then you had those teachers that screamed and yelled and they threatened attention, and they were terrifying. And again, your emotional level was probably about an 80 for most of the lesson. You were terrified and you weren't learning. But then you had those really great, engaging, that told good stories, got you to do great activities, things like that. That's the teacher. That's the teacher you want to be. Now, you're not a 50 with that teacher. You're engaged, you're excited about the stuff, you're listening, you're having a conversation, you're in the bubble with that teacher. And that's the teacher you want to be for your horse. So you want to think about being proactive, think about teaching your horse behaviors you want it to show you again and again and again, rather than being reactive and punishing the horse and reacting to behaviors you don't want to see again. As soon as you do something where you think you're correcting the horse, remember, it's just a nicer word than punishment. So there's 4, let's have a little quick talk, and I'm not going to bore you with the science, but there's 4 operant conditioning quadrants. 2 are reinforcement and 2 are punishment. So we have positive and negative in both sections. We have positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. We have positive punishment and negative punishment. Now, we talked earlier about you'll know the difference between it being reinforcement or punishment by your intention. So if I want this horse to do this behavior more in the future, I'm going to use reinforcement. And I'm going to use positive and negative together, and I'm going to call it combined reinforcement. So an example of positive punishment might be I might slap him on the face. An example of negative punishment might be I might move him away and tie him up on his own so he can't bite me and he's not with his friends. So negative means take something away. So with punishment, negative punishment, we don't use it much with horses, but it's things like tying the horse to the tree of knowledge. You remove the horse from its friends. Positive punishment is used more frequently. It is adding something. So it might be, if he goes to bite me, I might slap him on the nose. Problem is when I slap him on the nose, what's the one thing he does? What does he do first when I slap him on the nose? He raises his head. And that's something I never want him to do. I actually never want him to raise his head. So I've just taught him to raise his head by correcting him for doing something. Had I been more proactive and maybe asked him to walk forwards and backwards, got his attention, got him in the bubble, then I wouldn't have had to be in that position where I punished him and taught him something I didn't want him to do. So think about that all the time. Think about directing your energy towards that proactive path where you could use combined reinforcement. So with positive and negative reinforcement, same thing. And we've seen quite a lot of positive reinforcement today. We've been scratching the horse and stroking the horse. It's all forms of positive reinforcement. We add something positive, we add it. So give it food, give it a stroke, give it a kind word. Negative reinforcement is just a removal of something. It doesn't have to be something mean, doesn't have to be something really severe. It could be my voice. So if I want the horse to walk forward, I might cluck at the horse. I go like this for movement. As soon as the horse moves, I stop clucking. My voice is the pressure. But the negative reinforcement means pressure and release. The release is not the reward. The reward is the positive reinforcement. So you need to have both of them. Pressure release is negative reinforcement. Reward, that's positive reinforcements. We need to add the nice thing at the end. So that was the behavior I want. Good. Repeat that behavior. Do that more. So the negative reinforcement section tells the horse what it is we want. So it might be pressure on the lead rope. It directs the horse. It helps the horse by giving it that direction. And all of that and that predictability makes our horse much easier to control because we now have a handle on the horse's emotional level and we've now started to build that bubble of communication. And that bubble of communication, if you're really consistent and patient with your horse and you're aware of what you're wanting the horse to do before you actually ask the horse to do it. If you remember back when I asked the horse to step backwards, I knew in my head first the spot on the horse I wanted to move. It was its left front foot. I knew the direction. I wanted it to go backwards. I knew the motivator. That was I was going to use lead rope pressure and I was going to tap the horse with my hand. And I knew the reward. I was going to say good boy and I was going to give him a scratch. So I had all that set out before I ever asked the horse to do anything. So I stayed really proactive and it made the horse environment really predictable. And it helped me build that bubble. Remember, you're getting a horse that has come from quite an unpredictable life. And pressure hasn't always meant anything specific. It hasn't always meant the same thing. So you've got an opportunity now to really clarify that horse's world, that horse's environment, that horse's response to cues, and you can shape the behaviors that you want the horse to show you in the future. And I wish you all the best of luck because it's a fabulous journey and I know you're going to love it. Take your time, be patient, but be really aware of using combined reinforcement and being really, really clear for your horse what it is you want it to do every step of the way, and it will reward you 10 times over. Thank you.